Kamala, the calamity Harris, had just got herself into quite the pickle as she sat down with Rachel Maddow. And you know what? My goodness, did all hell break loose, from calling Trump a communist dictator to dodging questions about Pete Buttigieg to demoralizing President Biden. And you know what? All these clips went viral, mega viral, but unfortunately for Kamala Harris, and none for the right reasons. People are calling her a drunk, slurring her speech, and it is just unfortunate. And I want us to talk about it, because why not? So welcome to the Adam C. Moreno Show. If you like having conversations like this, if you think they matter, please consider liking, subscribing, and let's jump right in.
As a sort of talent spotter in the Democratic Party, what do you think of him and his candidacy? And what do you think of mainline Democratic shyness and agitation about the prospect that he's going to win?
Look, as far as I'm concerned, he's the Democratic nominee and he should be supported.
Do you endorse his candidacy?
I support the Democrat in the race, sure. But let me just say this. He's not the only star. I know that, he's in New York, and I know New Yorkers think they're the center of the world, and here we are in New York having this interview.
It is the biggest city in the country.
And I love New York, as the saying goes. I really do. But, there are people like Barbara Drummond in Mobile, Alabama, Helena Moreno in New Orleans. They're all running for mayor, too, and they are stars. So I hope that we don't so over-index on New York City that we lose sight of the stars throughout our country who are right now running for mayor and many other offices, governor and...
First of all, Ms. Harris, former vice president, I would like to take a quick PSA, if I may, to say that it's not pronounced Moreno, it's Moreno. Is that not the more natural way to say it? But hey, Helena Moreno, Mexican-American from New Orleans, you got my attention. Second of all, you're talking about Zohran Mamdani and supporting him, and many of whom would consider having communist ideals. But then seconds later, you compare President Trump to a communist dictator? What?
A tyrant. We used to compare the strength of our democracy to communist dictators. That's what we're dealing with right now in Donald Trump. And these titans of industry are not speaking up.
I genuinely don't even think Kamala Harris knows what she's talking about, and I do not say that lightly. But that really is nothing compared to what she said later, which alludes that she barely lost this election. I'm not kidding.
The sitting vice president enters the race against a former president of the United States who's been running for 10 years with 107 days to go. And it ended up being the closest presidential election in the 21st century.
So let me get this straight. Kamala Harris comes out of hiding after months only to misspeak so drastically. Honestly, I'm surprised that I'm not that surprised. The closest presidential election in the 21st century. What map are you looking at? Fire your advisors if they told you that. Kamala Harris lost every swing state. She lost the popular vote. By most measures, close is a laughable descriptor of the 2024 presidential race. No wonder people online are wasting no time in calling her drunk. All right, CJ Pearson says, must be drunk again. I am telling you, another person says she is a clearly drunk Kamala Harris because she called the president a communist dictator. And you know what? Kamala did end up talking about something that I thought was really interesting. She mentions how she knew President Biden wasn't fit to run again and how she regrets not stepping in sooner. Why, you ask? Check this out.
Decision. Whose decision should that have been? How should that decision have been made?
So when I write this, it's because I realize that I have and had a certain responsibility that I should have followed through on. Which is, and so when I talk about the recklessness, as much as anything, I'm talking about myself. There was so much, as we know, at stake. And as I write, the where my head was at the time is that it would come off as being completely self-serving.
If you said to President Biden that you did not think he should run again.
Yeah. Or even that he should question whether it's a good idea.
You know, I do want to give Kamala Harris credit because saying on national television that you hold some responsibility in part for allowing the atrocity that was President Biden to continue running, that does take courage. But, and this is a very, very big but, so do not, misplace my grace for anything other than what I'm about to say next. But the fact that she prioritized optics over truth and that she prioritized optics over the millions of people who were being gaslit by your administration by constantly being told that President Biden was okay when he very clearly, visibly wasn't. I'm sorry. I just don't think that's acceptable. And I'm not sure that it's forgivable when thinking about the future of her political career. And now for the most controversial part, the most viral. Rachel Maddow pressed Kamala about not picking Pete Buttigieg. Check this out.
A South Asian woman elected that high office, very nearly elected president, to say that he couldn't be on the ticket effectively because he was gay. It's hard to hear.
No. That's not what I said. That he couldn't be on the ticket because he is gay. My point, as I write in the book, is that I was clear that in 107 days, in one of the most hotly contested elections for president of the United States, against someone like Donald Trump, who knows no floor, to be a Black woman running for president of the United States and as a vice presidential running mate, a gay man, with the stakes being so high, it made me very sad, but I also realized it would be a real risk. No matter how, I've been an advocate and an ally of the LGBT community my entire life. So it wasn't about any prejudice on my part, but we had such a short period of time, and the stakes were so high. I think Pete is a phenomenal public servant. And I think America is and would be ready for that. But when I had to make that decision with 2 weeks to go, and maybe I was being too cautious, I'll let our friends, we should all talk about that. Maybe I was. But that's the decision I made, and I, as with everything else in the book, I'm being very candid about that.
Yeah.
With a great deal of sadness about also the fact that it might have been a risk.
My goodness, this is hard to watch. No wonder this moment went mega viral. The absolute hypocrisy here comes us from Kamala Harris. In one of my past videos, I suggested that Kamala wasn't someone who takes risks and she plays it all too safe. And here she basically admits that. That's not conviction, that's confusion. And I think about that in terms of how leaders need to operate whenever you're talking about the highest office of the land. And you know what? Yeah, millions of people saw this right now. That's not conviction. This is confusion. And after this interview, I think I'm leaning towards Stephen A. Smith's opinion whenever he says that Kamala Harris's political career is over. Check this out.
I believe Kamala Harris's political career is over. I think you've seen the last of her with this book, politically. I'm quite sure she's a highly intelligent woman, very accomplished. She's a former state attorney general. She's a former senator. She's a former vice president of the United States, and obviously the Democratic nominee for the presidency of the United States in 2024. But this was the last straw, and I'm going to tell you why. Because although I'm certainly not an advocate of her diming out her boss and talking about whatever deficiencies he may have had, you could have said something. You could have done something other than what you did. And I don't want to hear about 107 days and that's all you had. You know what 107 days gave you? It gave you the opportunity to take over the campaign and do it your way.
Absolutely. And I know what you're saying. Stephen A. Smith, Adam, how does this reflect the opinion of most Americans. Well, you know what? You want some data, you want some science, here's some data straight from CNN sharing definitively that Kamala Harris is down deep.
I would just say that if you want a messenger to go against Donald Trump, you can do far better as Democrats than Kamala Harris. What are we talking about here? Well, let's take a look at her net favorable ratings nationwide. You know, back in October of 2024, she was at -5 points. Not exactly great, but pretty close to the zero mark, right? Pretty close to even. But now, down under she goes. She's at -13 points. That's an 8-point drop. Since the general election among the overall electorate, she is not well liked at this particular point. The American people, they don't want this. They don't want her. And get this, she's 37 points underwater with independents. If you can't win independents, you can't win the election. And the bottom line is, with those in the center electorate, those who are the most up for grabs, she is way, way, way underwater. She is definitely swimming with the fishes.
So she is swimming with the fish. Can she recover? You know what? That's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying. But that's just what I think. You let me know your thoughts on Kamala Harris today in the comment section. And if you made it this far, please consider liking, subscribing, turn on the bell, and have a good rest of your day. Episode's over already? Geez, that was fast. Well, they say beautiful things do not last forever, but feel free to watch and listen to another one of these episodes if you're interested in those conversations as well. Also, this next part is huge. Make sure to obliterate that like and subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never skip a beat. I also have a newsletter where we dive into the news, politics, and ideas that shape our future. If you're interested in signing up, I'd really appreciate that. Anyways, that's the end of this episode. Thank you so much for watching and listening, and I'll see you next time.